Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was trained by Goro, Majima and Taiga Saejima during his internship under Gran Torino. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The train rattled rhythmically against the tracks, a soothing, mechanical lullaby that did absolutely nothing to calm the storm raging inside Izuku Midoriya's stomach. Outside the window, the sprawling concrete density of Tokyo had long since given way to the rolling hills and quieter, dustier sprawl of Yamanashi Prefecture. It was a different world out here. Less frantic, less polished. The sky seemed wider, but the shadows cast by the afternoon sun felt longer, heavier. Izuku gripped the straps of his yellow backpack, his knuckles turning white. He stared at his reflection in the train window, but he didn't see himself. He saw the text message from Ida. I will be fine. Focus on your internship. It was too formal. Too brief. It was the text of someone trying to convince themselves more than the recipient. Izuku knew Tenya Ida. He knew the rigid, upright posture of his friend's soul. The attack on his brother, Ingenium, by the hero killer Stain had cracked that posture. Ida had chosen an internship in Hosa City, the very hunting ground of the hero killer. It didn't take a genius analyst to connect the dots. I hope you're not doing something stupid, Ida-kun, Izuku whispered to the glass, but Izuku had his own stupid to deal with. He looked down at the crumpled slip of paper in his hand. Gran Torino. The name was a ghost story. When All Might, the symbol of peace, the man who laughed in the face of tectonic disasters, had spoken that name, he had shivered. He had trembled. All Might, the man who caught buildings, was afraid of his old homeroom teacher. He's a bit strict, All Might had said, looking away, sweat beading on his forehead. But he's the only one who can teach you what you need right now. I've taught you how to be a symbol. He will teach you how to be a hero. Izuku took a deep breath, inhaling the recycled air of the train car. He had to focus. He had one for all, the greatest power on earth, coursing through his veins, yet he could barely use 5% of it without shattering his bones like glass. He was a cannon that broke every time it fired. If Gran Torino could fix that, if he could help Izuku control this volatile ocean of power, then he had to endure whatever strictness awaited him. The train hissed to a halt at Kofu Station. The doors slid open. Okay, Izuku muttered, slapping his cheeks. Start of the internship. Let's go, Deku. The address led him away from the city center, into a neighborhood that time seemed to have forgotten. The buildings here weren't the gleaming glass towers of Musudafu. They were Showa-era relics, squat blocks of gray concrete stained by rain and exhaust. The power lines sagged low, buzzing like angry hornets. Izuku stood before a particularly dilapidated building. The paint was peeling in long, sunburned strips. A rusty air conditioning unit rattled violently on the second floor, dripping water onto the pavement. This is it? Izuku checked the paper again. Gran Torino. Apartment 6-12. It didn't look like the home of a legendary hero. It looked like a place people went to disappear. He climbed the external stairs, the metal clanging hollowly under his red sneakers. The air smelled of old frying oil and dust. When he reached the door, he hesitated. He adjusted his tie. He straightened his blazer. First impressions were crucial. This man had trained All Might. He expected discipline. He expected military precision. Izuku knocked. Excuse me. I am Izuku Midoriya from Yae High School. Silence. He knocked again. Hello? Still nothing. Izuku frowned. The door wasn't fully latched. It creaked inward a fraction, revealing a sliver of darkness. Is anyone home? He pushed the door open. The apartment was dim, the curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. Boxes were stacked haphazardly in the hallway, overflowing with old newspapers and magazines. It smelled musty, like a library that had flooded, and then he saw it. Lying in the middle of the floor, face down, was a small, elderly man in a white costume and yellow cape. And beneath him, spreading across the tatami mats, was a pool of viscous, red liquid. Izuku's heart stopped. Ideally, a hero should assess the situation calmly. Izuku, however, screamed. Oh my God! He's dead! Someone killed him! I'm too late. He scrambled forward, his mind racing through CPR protocols and crime scene preservation. Sir, hold on. I'll call an ambulance. Who could have done this? The small body twitched. The head lifted slowly. I'm alive, the old man croaked. Izuku froze, phone halfway to his ear. Huh! I was carrying a plate of sausages with ketchup, the old man grumbled, pushing himself up. And I tripped. He gestured to the smashed plate, and the splatter of ketchup that Izuku had mistaken for blood. The old man, Gran Torino, blinked rheumy eyes at Izuku. He looked less like a master of combat, and more like a grandfather who had forgotten where he put his glasses. Who are you? Gran Torino asked, tilting his head. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stammered, trying to reset his brain. From UA. You sent the nomination, Midoriya? Gran Torino scratched his chin. Who's that? Izuku's shoulders slumped. He's senile. All Might sent me to a senile old man. This is a disaster. Tashinori! Gran Torino suddenly shouted, looking at the ceiling. Have you seen my cane? I'm not Tashinori. I'm Midoriya. Izuku waved his hands. Tashinori is All Might. I'm his student. Student? Gran Torino's gaze sharpened for a millisecond, then went dull again. I want to eat. He shuffled toward a small kitchenette. Izuku stood there, lost. Was this a test? Or was the man genuinely compromised? Sir, Izuku started, trying to regain control of the situation. I came here to learn. I want to learn how to control my power. All Might said you were the one to teach me. Gran Torino ignored him, rummaging through a cabinet. Whatever. Fire a one for all smash at me. Excuse me? You heard me, the old man said, not turning around. You're wearing your costume, aren't you? Put it on. Let's see what the eighth holder can do. The sudden shift in tone, from confused senior to commanding instructor, sent a jolt through Izuku. He scrambled to the bathroom, changing into his beta costume in record time. When he emerged, adjusting his gloves, Gran Torino was waiting. I can't just attack you, Izuku protested. I can't control the output properly. If I hit you, I might kill you. Just do it, Gran Torino said, lazily picking at a sausage. Izuku gritted his teeth. He's underestimating me. Or he's testing my hesitation. Izuku crouched, channeling the power. 5%. Just 5%. No, he wants a smash. But I have to be careful. Smaz! Izuku launched himself, aiming a punch that would stop inches from the old man's face. In the blink of an eye, Gran Torino vanished. What? Impact. A yellow blur ricocheted off the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Before Izuku could track him, a hard boot slammed into the back of his head, driving his face into the floorboards. Too slow, Gran Torino's voice came from above. He was standing on the microwave, looking down with eyes that were no longer dull. They were sharp, assessing, and terrifyingly clear. You're stiff. You telegraph your moves. And your admiration for Tashinori is shackles on your legs. Izuku groaned, rubbing his head. The speed was incredible. It was a quirk, jet. He expelled air from the soles of his feet. But the control, it was absolute. That was amazing, Izuku breathed. It was basic, Gran Torino hopped down. He looked at Izuku with a sigh. Tashinori was right. You're a mess. You're trying to drive a sports car in first gear. You're going to blow the engine. Gran Torino walked to the far end of the apartment, toward a sliding shoji door that led to a back room. However, the old man muttered, I'm old. I can teach you the mechanics of the power. I can teach you how to move. But I can't teach you the grit you're missing. You fight like a hero student taking an exam. You don't fight like you want to survive. I've fought villains. Izuku protested. At the USJ. I fought muscular. You survived, Gran Torino corrected. You sacrificed your body to win. That's not fighting. That's martyrdom. If you want to master one for all, you need to learn to be selfish. You need to learn how to brawl. Gran Torino placed his hand on the sliding door. I called in some favors, Gran Torino said, his voice dropping an octave. Before I was a teacher at UA, And even while I was a hero, I operated in the gray areas. The underground. I made contacts with people who understand violence in a way heroes never will. Izuku felt a chill crawl up his spine. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, the temperature dropping. I brought in 2 consultants, Gran Torino said. To break you. He slid the door open. The room beyond was surprisingly large, cleared of all furniture. Incense smoke hung heavy in the air, swirling in lazy, thick ribbons. 2 figures occupied the space. One sat in the center of the room, cross-legged on the tatami, still as a statue. He was enormous, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a face carved from granite. He wore a heavy, green parka despite the warmth of the day. His eyes were closed, his breathing so deep and slow it barely disturbed the smoke. A tiger tattoo seemed to peek out from the collar of his shirt. The other figure was harder to locate. Yo! A voice cackled from directly above Izuku's head. Izuku yelped and jumped back, looking up. Clinging to the ceiling fan like a spider was a lean, wiry man wearing a snakeskin jacket that looked loud enough to scream. He wore an eye patch over his right eye, and his remaining eye, wild, manic, and burning with a terrifying energy, was locked onto Izuku. He held a lit cigarette in one hand and a dagger in the other. So this is the little rabbit, huh? The man on the ceiling grinned, revealing rows of teeth that looked predatory. He dropped to the floor, landing silently, defying physics with a grace that unnerved Izuku more than the fall itself. Gran Torino, Izuku squeaked, backing up until he hit the wall. Who are these people? This, Gran Torino gestured to the man in the snakeskin jacket, is Goro Majima. The mad dog. Majima twirled the dagger, the blade dancing between his fingers. Nice to meet ya, Deku-chan. And him, Gran Torino pointed to the giant meditating on the floor, is Taiga Saejima. The tiger. Saejima opened his eyes. They were dark, heavy with a weight of sorrow and violence that Izuku had never seen in a pro-hero. He looks fragile, Saejima rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. Are they heroes? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. He scanned them for hero licenses, for insignias, for anything familiar. They didn't feel like heroes. They felt like the things heroes fought. Heroes? Majima threw his head back and laughed, a high, hyena-like sound that scraped against Izuku's nerves. Nah. We're retired, kid. Just a couple of old Yakuza dealing with the pension life. Yakuza? Izuku paled. You brought Yakuza into your house? Ex-Yakuza, Gran Torino corrected sharply. And legends. These 2 survived the Kamurocho underworld for decades without quirks that shoot fire or ice. They survived on pure instinct, technique, and willpower. Gran Torino looked at Izuku, his expression dead serious. All Might taught you to save people with a smile. These 2 are going to teach you how to beat a man until he stops moving, so you can save those people. Izuku looked between the 3 of them. The tiny, speedy old man. The mountain of muscle. And the one-eyed demon in a snakeskin jacket. Wait, Izuku said, his analyst brain trying to process this. Quirkless? You mean, they fight without powers? Majima leaned in, invading Izuku's personal space. He smelled of cheap cigarettes and expensive cologne. Powers? He tapped his temple. The only power you need is up here, and in your gut. We heard you got some super-duper mega quirk, right? But you break your bones every time you use it. Majima poked Izuku's chest hard. That's 'cause you're soft. You rely on the power. You let the power wear you. Saejima stood up. As he rose, he seemed to keep growing. He towered over Izuku, easily 6 feet and several inches of pure density. The old man tells us you want to be the best, Saejima said. But you stand with your weight on your heels. Your chin is up. Your eyes are darting around looking for an exit. Saejima took a step forward. The floorboards creaked. If you were in prison, Saejima said flatly, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in the yard. Prison? Izuku squeaked. Ignore the context, Gran Torino snapped. Focus on the lesson. Right. Izuku straightened up. I appreciate you taking the time to help me. I know I have a lot to learn. He bowed deeply, a perfect 90-degree angle. Polite, Majima noted, circling Izuku like a shark. I hate it. He's a good kid, Saejima muttered. But goodness gets you killed in our line of work. I'm ready for whatever training you have. Izuku declared to the floor, maintaining his bow. Is that so? Majima's voice was suddenly right next to his ear. Whoosh. Izuku's instincts, honed by the UE Sports Festival and the USJ attack, screamed at him. Dodge. He threw himself backward, rolling over his shoulder. A silver blur sliced the air where his nose had been a microsecond ago. Izuku scrambled to his feet, eyes wide. Majima was standing there, the dagger extended, a look of bored disappointment on his face. He held back, Izuku realized with horror. If he hadn't, my nose would be gone. Reflexes are okay, Majima shrugged. But you retreated. Why'd you retreat, Deku-chan? Because you had a knife. So? Majima tilted his head. If I'm a villain, and I have a knife, and you run back, what do I do? Majima lunged. He didn't use a quirk. He didn't flash with light. He just moved. It was a chaotic, spinning rush, his legs kicking out in a breakdance-like rhythm that made his trajectory impossible to predict. Izuku activated full cowling. Green lightning crackled around his body. 5% enclosure. He saw Majima's kick coming, a sweeping blow to the ribs. Izuku raised his arms to block. Clang. The impact was heavy. It felt like being hit with a steel pipe, not a human leg. Izuku skidded back, his arms stinging. You blocked, Majima laughed, spinning on one hand and launching a flurry of kicks from the ground. Boring! Boring! Why didn't you break my leg? I can't hurt a civilian! Izuku shouted, jumping onto the wall to gain distance. Civilian? Majima looked offended. Saejima-chan, he called me a civilian, Saejima sighed. He walked over to a stack of concrete cinder blocks that Gran Torino must have brought in for construction. He picked up 2 of them, one in each hand. Crack! He crushed them. He didn't smash them against each other. He simply closed his hands, and the concrete turned to dust and gravel, spilling through his fingers. We are not civilians, Saejima stated. We are your wall. Gran Torino hopped onto a cabinet, munching on a taiyaki he had seemingly materialized out of nowhere. Midoriya. Stop analyzing. Stop thinking about hero laws. For the next week, this apartment is a lawless zone. If you don't fight back, Majima will put you in the hospital. And I won't stop him. Izuku looked at Gran Torino, looking for the joke. There was no joke. Majima cracked his neck. A purple aura, was that a quirk? No, it was just sheer, tangible bloodlust, seemed to flare around him. He sheathed the dagger and pulled out a metal baseball bat from behind his back. All right, let's heat things up. Majima yelled. Come at me with everything you got, All Might Jr. Let's see if the symbol of peace raised a dragon or a worm. Izuku swallowed hard. The green lightning around him intensified. He couldn't run. He couldn't reason with them. He had to fight, one for all. Full cowling, Izuku whispered. He settled into his stance, legs wide, fists raised. That's a pretty stance, Saejima critiqued from the sidelines. Textbook. Let's ruin it. Majima cackled. Majima rushed forward, swinging the bat with a feral scream. Izuku didn't retreat this time. He stepped in. Dodge the swing. Get inside his guard. Smash to the solar plexus. Izuku ducked under the wild swing of the bat. He saw the opening. It was wide open. He pulled his fist back. Smash! His fist connected with Majima's stomach, but it didn't feel like flesh. It felt like hitting a tightly coiled spring. Majima didn't even flinch. Instead, he grinned, a terrifying, ecstatic expression. Gotcha, Majima whispered. Majima spun with the momentum of the punch, his body twisting like a tornado. His elbow came around and smashed into Izuku's face. Izuku saw stars. The force of the blow sent him spinning. Before he could recover, Majima swept his legs. Izuku hit the tatami hard. Rule number 1. Majima shouted, standing over him, the bat resting on his shoulder. Don't punch if you ain't ready to get hit back harder. Izuku gasped for air, his nose throbbing. He looked up at the 3 men. Gran Torino checked his watch. You lasted 6 seconds. We have a lot of work to do. Saejima walked over and offered a massive hand to help Izuku up. Get up, kid. We're just getting started. And fix your face. You look like you're about to cry. Izuku took the hand. Saejima pulled him up with zero effort. Izuku wiped a trickle of blood from his lip. He looked at Majima, who was doing a little dance while humming a pop song. He looked at Saejima, who stood like a fortress. He looked at Gran Torino, the teacher of the world's greatest hero. The fear was still there. But beneath it, something else was kindling. Frustration. Determination. Again, Izuku said, his voice shaky but audible. Majima stopped dancing. He looked at Izuku, his one eye widening slightly. Oh? Majima grinned. Glutton for punishment? I'm here to learn, Izuku said, raising his fists again. The green lightning sparked brighter. So teach me. Saejima crossed his arms and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Better eyes. Gran Torino finished his taiyaki. Well? Don't keep the guests waiting, kid. Majima twirled his bat. Music to my ears. Let's dance, Deku-chan. Until morning. As the sun began to set over Kofu, casting long shadows across the room, the sounds of a brutal education began to echo through the apartment block. It wasn't the sound of a hero being made, it was the sound of iron being forged in a very strange, very violent fire, and Izuku Midoriya was the iron. Later that evening, Izuku lay on the floor, panting. Every muscle in his body screamed. He had bruises on his bruises. He was pretty sure Majima had bitten him at one point. Gran Torino was in the kitchenette boiling water for tea. Saejima was sitting by the window, carving a small piece of wood with a pocket knife. Majima was hanging from the ceiling again, apparently asleep. Here, Gran Torino placed a cup of tea near Izuku's head. Drink. It helps with the inflammation. Izuku pushed himself up to a sitting position, his arms trembling. Thank you. You learn fast, Saejima said without looking up from his carving. Your body adapts. But your mind is still slow. I overthink, Izuku admitted. I try to predict every outcome. In a street fight, Majima mumbled from the ceiling, not opening his eye, thinking it's suicide. You gotta feel the heat. The heat? Izuku asked. Majima dropped down, landing cross-legged next to Izuku. Yeah. The heat. It's the fire in your gut. When you're angry. When you're scared. When you want to protect something so bad you chew through a brick wall. Heroes, you guys bottle that up. You try to be cool. Calm. Symbols. Majima leaned in close. But true power comes from letting that heat explode. You gotta channel it. Use the environment. Use your enemy's face. Use a bicycle. Whatever works. I don't think I can use a bicycle as a weapon, Majima-san, Izuku said nervously. Not with that attitude, Majima scoffed. What Majima is trying to say, Gran Torino interjected, is that you treat your quirk like a tool you carry in a box. You take it out, use it, and put it back. But it's not a tool. It's part of you. Just like your anger. Just like your fear. Gran Torino pointed a cane at Izuku's chest. All Might is the symbol of peace because he smiles to hide the fear. But you aren't All Might. You can't just copy his smile and expect the same results. Saejima and Majima represent two sides of the coin you're missing, Gran Torino continued. Majima is chaos. Unpredictability. Speed. Saejima is resolve. Durability. Power. You have the power, Saejima said, finally looking up. But you don't have the resolve to use it on yourself. On myself? Izuku asked. To carry the burden, Saejima said. To take the hit and keep moving. You break because you brace yourself against the pain. You need to accept the pain. Let it flow through you. Izuku looked at his hands, scarred and crooked from his previous battles. Tomorrow, Saejima said, standing up. We go to the construction site. You're going to learn how to carry weight properly. And after that, Majima piped up, we're gonna play tag. And if I catch ya, I get to shave your head. Please don't, Izuku whispered. Get some sleep, kid, Gran Torino said, turning off the main light. You're going to need it. Welcome to the underworld internship. Izuku lay back down on the tatami. The smell of incense was still there, mixed with the smell of sweat and old tea. He closed his eyes. He thought of All Might. He thought of Stain. He thought of the League of Villains, and then he thought of Majima's grin and Saejima's crushing grip. Just wait, everyone, Izuku whispered into the darkness. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to survive this. Above him, in the shadows of the rafters, a single eye gleamed, and a low, manic chuckle drifted down like a lullaby from hell. That's the spirit, Deku-chan. That's the spirit. The sun had not yet risen over the Yamanashi prefecture. The sky was a bruised purple, bleeding into a charcoal gray at the horizon. The world outside was silent, save for the distant, rhythmic chirping of early morning insects and the occasional rumble of a truck on the highway. Inside the cramped, dusty apartment of the retired hero Gran Torino, silence was a luxury that had been violently evicted. Up. 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 Wakey wakey, Deku-chan. Izuku Midoriya was jolted from a dreamless, exhausted sleep by the sound of metal clanging against metal. He scrambled upright, his heart hammering against his ribs, tangled in the thin blanket Gran Torino had lent him. Villain attack? Izuku yelped, blinking the sleep from his eyes. Standing over him was Goro Majima. The one-eyed man was fully dressed in his snakeskin jacket and leather pants, looking as if he hadn't slept at all. In his hands were two pot lids, which he was banging together with the enthusiasm of a marching band drummer on caffeine. No villains, just training. Majima cackled, leaning down until his face was inches from Izuku's. His single eye was wide, bloodshot, and terrifyingly energetic. Sun's coming up. The early bird catches the worm, but the mad dog catches the bird. Let's move, Izuku groaned, his body protesting as he tried to move. Every muscle fiber felt like it had been soaked in lead and set on fire. The previous day's introduction had left him with a constellation of bruises across his ribs and arms. It's 4:30 in the morning, Izuku croaked, checking the clock on the wall. Time is a construct for people who have day jobs. Majima declared, tossing the pot lids onto the tatami with a deafening clatter. We ain't people. We're monsters. And monsters don't hit the snooze button. From the kitchenette, the smell of miso soup and grilled fish wafted through the air. Taiga Saejima was already there, his massive frame dwarfing the small stove. He wore a simple gray tank top that exposed the thick, corded muscles of his arms and the edges of the tiger tattoo on his back. He looked as solid and immovable as a mountain. Eat, Saejima rumbled without turning around. You'll need the fuel. Today we break you. Good morning to you too, Saejima-san, Izuku sighed, dragging himself to the small bathroom to wash his face. As he splashed cold water onto his skin, Izuku looked at his reflection. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were prominent. But beneath the fatigue, there was a spark of anticipation. He remembered how helpless he had felt against the Nomu at the USJ. He remembered the crushing pressure of the sports festival. I have to change, he told himself. I can't keep breaking. I can't keep being the glass cannon. When he emerged, Gran Torino was sitting at the low table, sipping tea. The old hero looked deceptively frail, his small stature hiding the jet engine power in his legs. Sit, Gran Torino commanded. Izuku sat. Saejima placed a bowl of rice and fish in front of him. The portion was enormous, easily triple what Izuku usually ate. Eat it all, Saejima said, sitting down with his own mountain of food. Your body is weak because it lacks mass. You have a quirk that generates immense pressure, but your vessel is too thin to contain it. You need density. Right, Izuku nodded, picking up his chopsticks. He began to eat, his analyst's brain already whirring. Caloric intake versus energy expenditure. Muscle recovery. If I increase my mass, the recoil from one for all might be distributed more effectively. Stop thinking so loud, Majima muttered around a mouthful of rice. I can hear the gears grinding in your head. It's annoying. Sorry, Izuku mumbled. I want to understand the logic behind the training. Majima slammed his chopsticks down. Logic. Logic. That's your problem, kid. You think a street fight has logic? You think a villain fills out a form in triplicate before he stabs you in the gut? Majima pointed a chopstick at Izuku's nose. You fight like you're taking a math test. You're looking for the variables. You're trying to solve for X. But in a fight, X is a fist in your face. Majima is right, Gran Torino said, his voice surprisingly stern. Tashinori. All Might, he was a natural. He had the body for it from day one. He fought with intuition. You, Midoriya, you fight with your brain. That's your greatest strength, but right now, it's your fatal flaw. You hesitate. You calculate. And in that split second of calculation you die. Izuku lowered his head. They were right. He knew they were right. Every time he fought, he was running simulations. If I use 100% here. If I dodge left. So Saejima said, finishing his bowl in record time. Today, we take away your ability to think. The training ground was the cleared-out back room of the apartment. The furniture had been pushed into the hallway, leaving a roughly 15 by 15 foot space of tatami mats. It was small. Claustrophobic. Suit up, Gran Torino ordered. Izuku changed into his green costume. The familiar weight of the fabric usually gave him confidence, but today it felt heavy. He adjusted his gloves, checking the bracing. All right, Majima stepped into the center of the room. He wasn't holding a weapon this time. He was just standing there, his posture loose, his arms hanging by his sides. But the air around him felt electric. Come at me, Deku-chan. No quirks yet. Just hands? Just hands? Izuku blinked. But I'm a retired Yakuza with one eye and a bad knee, Majima grinned, tapping his eye patch. You're a hero student in his prime. Should be easy, right? Izuku took a stance. It was the standard Yui combat stance. Fists raised, guard up, feet shoulder-width apart. It was textbook. Perfect. Begin! Gran Torino shouted. Izuku didn't wait. He lunged. A straight right punch, aimed at Majima's chest. A safe, testing jab. Majima didn't block. He didn't dodge left or right. He dropped. Izuku's fist punched empty air. Before his brain could register where his target had gone, Majima was on the floor, spinning on his back like a breakdancer. His legs sighed out in a windmill motion. Wham! Majima's heel caught Izuku behind the knee. Izuku's leg buckled. As he fell, Majima pushed off the floor with his hands, transitioning into a handstand spin. His boots became a blur of leather. Thud. Smack. Crack. 3 kicks landed in rapid succession. Chest, shoulder, chin. Izuku tumbled backward, skidding across the tatami. He gasped, scrambling to his feet. What kind of fighting style is that? Majima hopped to his feet, bouncing lightly on his toes. He did a little pirouette. It's the I'm gonna mess you up style. It's called Breaker, kid! Why stand still when you can be everywhere at once? Again. Gran Torino barked. Izuku gritted his teeth. Okay. He stays low. He uses momentum. I need to keep my distance and wait for him to stop spinning. Izuku circled. He watched Majima. Majima wasn't taking a stance. He was moonwalking? No, he was gliding sideways, his movements erratic. Now, Majima stopped for a split second. Izuku charged, aiming a low kick to sweep Majima's legs before he could start spinning again. Majima laughed. Too predictable. Instead of spinning, Majima lunged forward, dropping his shoulder. He slipped inside Izuku's kick range. He grabbed Izuku's collar with one hand and his belt with the other. Fly high, little bird! With a grunt of effort that seemed disproportionate to his wiry frame, Majima hurled Izuku. He didn't just throw him, he spun him. Izuku's world turned into a kaleidoscope of ceiling and floor before he slammed into the wall with a bone-rattling thud. Izuku slid down the wall, groaning. You're watching my feet, Majima lectured, not even out of breath. You saw me spinning before, so your brain said he will spin again. You prepared a counter for the spin. You ignored the fact that I have hands. Majima walked over, squatting down in front of Izuku. You're fighting a memory, Deku-chan. You're fighting the last move I made, not the one I'm making right now. Then how? Izuku wheezed, clutching his ribs. How do I predict? You don't! Majima shouted, slapping the floor. You react. You flow. Be like water. Or be like a crazy dog. Whatever works. Saejima stepped forward. Enough, Majima. You're just confusing him. The giant man pulled Izuku up. He dusted off the boy's costume with hands that felt like shovels. Midoriya, Saejima said, his voice deep and calm. Imagine you are taking a test at school. Question 1 is a math problem. You know the formula. You apply it. You get the answer. Correct? Yes, Izuku nodded. Now, Saejima pointed to the center of the room. Imagine you are walking home. A man jumps out with a knife. He screams. He slashes. Is there a formula? No, Izuku whispered. There is no formula, Saejima agreed. In the dojo, in UA, there are rules. There are mats. There is a referee. Your opponent bows. You bow. It is a conversation. Saejima's eyes hardened. The street is not a conversation. It is a riot. There is uneven pavement. There is broken glass. There are no referees. If you fall, he will stomp on your head. If you hesitate, he will stab you. Your problem, Saejima continued, is that you are trying to force the chaos of a fight into the order of a classroom. You want to control the variable. You cannot control the variable. You can only control yourself. Gran Torino hopped down from his perch on top of the fridge. And that brings us to your quirk. The old hero limped over, his cane tapping rhythmically. Tashinori tells me you break your bones because you can only use 100% or 0%. Is that right? Yes, Izuku said, rubbing his arm. I can dial it down, but it's unstable. If I try to punch with 5%, I usually panic and it shoots up, or I hold back too much and it does nothing. Show me, Gran Torino said. Try to punch Saejima with 5%. Just 5%. Izuku took a breath. He focused. He visualized the egg in the microwave. Don't let it explode. Lower the heat. Keep the egg intact. He felt the power hum in his veins. One for all. It was a roaring ocean, demanding to be let out. He clamped down on it, forcing it into a trickle. Smaz! He punched Saejima's open palm. Pat! It was weak. Barely a tap. Saejima didn't even blink. That was nothing. I clamped down too hard, Izuku admitted. I'm afraid of breaking my arm again. Try again, Gran Torino said. Don't think about holding back. Think about distribution. Distribution? Saejima walked over to the corner of the room where a stack of heavy construction tiles sat. He picked up a stack of 10 tiles, easily weighing 100 pounds, and held them out to Izuku. Hold this, Saejima ordered. Izuku took the stack. His arms immediately sagged. His biceps strained. His back bowed. It's heavy. Hold it with just your arms, Saejima said. Don't use your legs. Don't use your back. Just your arms. I can't. Izuku gritted his teeth, his arms shaking violently. It's too heavy. Exactly, Saejima said. He took the stack back with one hand, effortlessly. One for all is a heavy load. It is the heaviest load in the world. And you are trying to lift it with just your arm. You are trying to channel a tsunami through a garden hose. Saejima placed the tiles on Izuku's shoulders this time. Now. Stand up straight. Engage your core. Plant your feet. Use your legs. Use your spine. Carry the weight with your whole body. Izuku adjusted. He widened his stance. He tightened his stomach muscles. He felt the weight settle. It was still heavy, but it was manageable. His legs were taking the brunt of it, his spine acting as a pillar. It's lighter, Izuku breathed. It is the same weight, Saejima corrected. But you are not fighting it. You are accepting it. You are distributing the stress across your entire structure. Gran Torino pointed his cane at Izuku. This is what you're missing. You treat one for all like a gun you fire. Bang. Then it's over. But it shouldn't be a gun. It should be a suit of armor. It should be everywhere, all the time, full. Cowling, Izuku whispered. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. He had been thinking of the power as a switch. On. Off. Punch. Kick. But if he kept it running, if he let the power flow through his entire body constantly, arms, legs, torso, neck, then the pressure in any single point would be lower. He wouldn't be trying to force the ocean through a straw. He would become the ocean. Let the power flow, Majima whispered, suddenly appearing right behind Izuku, making him jump. Like electricity. Like adrenaline. Don't pull it in your fist. Let it run through your veins. Let it heat you up. Izuku closed his eyes. He forgot about the microwave. He forgot about the egg. He thought about the tiles. He thought about the weight on his shoulders. Don't lift with your arm. Lift with your body. Spread the load. He triggered one for all. Usually, the power rushed to his limb of choice. This time, he mentally pushed it down. Into his legs. Up his spine. Across his shoulders. Green sparks began to flicker around his feet. Then his knees. Then his chest. The air in the room seemed to vibrate. Izuku opened his eyes. He wasn't glowing in one spot. His entire body was wreathed in a faint, crackling green aura. The red veins of power didn't bulge on his arm. They traced a web across his skin, glowing softly. Heh, Majima grinned, stepping back. Look at that. The bunny's got a glow. How does it feel? Gran Torino asked, his eyes sharp. Izuku clenched his fist. He didn't feel the familiar stinging pain of the power building up to a breaking point. He felt light. He felt buoyant. It feels natural, Izuku said, amazed. He bounced on his toes. He felt like he could jump through the ceiling. It's like wearing the power. 5%, Gran Torino analyzed. Maybe a little more. But it's stable. Maintain it, Saejima ordered. Don't let it drop. Breathe. Walk around. Get used to the weight. Izuku began to pace the room. The lightning crackled and popped. He felt fast. He felt strong. It was intoxicating. This is it, Izuku grinned, looking at his hands. I can fight like this. I can move. Good, Majima said, cracking his knuckles. He picked up his baseball bat from the corner. Now, let's see if you can keep it up while I try to cave your skull in. Izuku froze. Wait, what? You figured out the trick in a vacuum, Majima said, his grin returning, wider and sharper than before. But can you do it when the heat is on? Can you carry that heavy load when a mad dog is biting at your heels? Majima swung the bat. A vicious, horizontal arc aimed right at Izuku's head. Izuku didn't think. The power was already there. His legs were already primed. He ducked. It wasn't a desperate, scrambling dodge. It was a blur. He moved faster than he ever had without breaking a bone. The bat passed harmlessly over his hair. Ha! Izuku exclaimed, surprising himself. Don't celebrate yet. Majima spun the bat, bringing it down in an overhead smash. Izuku sidestepped. The bat cracked against the tatami. I can see him, Izuku realized. I'm not just faster. My senses are heightened. The power is enhancing everything. Move, kid! Move! Majima laughed, swinging wildly. Izuku danced back. He was clumsy, yes. He was still overthinking his footing, yes. But he wasn't dying. He was keeping up. Attack! Gran Torino shouted. Don't just run. You're a hero, not a rabbit. Izuku planted his foot. The green lightning flared. He channeled the flow into his right leg. Don't kick through him. Kick fast. Snap it. He launched a roundhouse kick. Majima blocked it with the bat, but the impact sent him skidding backward a few feet. Majima's eyes widened in genuine surprise. Oh ho! Majima shook his hands, the bat vibrating. That had some kick to it. That's what I'm talking about. I did it, Izuku breathed. He looked at his leg. No broken bones. No purple bruising. Just the hum of power. You're stiff, Saejima criticized, though his tone was approving. You're telegraphing the kick. You wind up too much. But he didn't break, Gran Torino noted with a satisfied nod. He's finally driving the car instead of letting the car drive him. All right. Majima threw his bat in the air and caught it. Round 2. Let's see how long you can hold that form before you pass out. Bring it on! Izuku shouted. And for the first time since arriving, he wasn't shouting out of fear. He was shouting out of excitement. The sparring session lasted for another 2 hours. By the end of it, Izuku was lying flat on his back, staring at the ceiling fan. The green lightning was gone. He was exhausted in a way he had never experienced before. It wasn't the sharp agony of broken bones, it was a deep, systemic drain. His entire body felt like jelly, but he was smiling. "You did good, kid," a voice said. Majima was sitting next to him, applying a cold compress to a bruise on Izuku's shoulder. It was a surprisingly gentle gesture from a man who had spent the last 2 hours trying to bludgeon him. "You got guts," Majima said quietly. "Most people, when they get hit, they flinch. They curl up. You get mad. You get focused." "I have to," Izuku whispered. "I have to be the symbol of peace. Like All Might." "Nah," Majima shook his head. He pulled a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket but didn't light one, respecting the indoor space. "All Might is a statue. A golden statue. Statues are hard, but they crack. You ain't a statue." Majima poked Izuku's forehead. "You're a weed. A stubborn, green weed growing through the concrete. You get stepped on, you bounce back. That's better than being a statue." Izuku chuckled weakly. "A weed? That's not very heroic." "It's survivor talk," Saejima said, walking over with a tray of water bottles. He handed one to Izuku. "Survivors win in the end. Legends die young." Saejima sat down, the floorboards groaning under his weight. "Today you learn to carry the weight," Saejima said. "You learn full cowling. It is a foundation. But a foundation is not a house." "What's next?" Izuku asked, sitting up and drinking the water greedily. "Tomorrow," Gran Torino said from the kitchen, "we work on mobility. You can run, but you run in straight lines. Heroes don't run in straight lines. Villains don't run in straight lines. Tomorrow," Majima grinned, "we teach you how to dance. And not that waltz crap they teach at high society balls. I'm talking street dancing. Parkour. Using the walls. Using the ceiling." Majima pointed a thumb at himself. "You're gonna learn the mad dog style of movement. You're gonna learn to be so annoying that the villain wants to quit." Izuku looked at the three of them. The retired hero. The mad dog. The tiger. He realized something. These men weren't just training him. They were investing in him. They saw something in him, the quirky, nervous, overthinking boy, that was worth polishing. "Thank you," Izuku said, bowing his head. I won't let you down." "You better not," Gran Torino grunted. "Or I'll have to come out of retirement and kick your butt myself. And if you do good," Majima whispered conspiratorially, "I'll teach you the secret to the perfect karaoke performance." "I think I'll pass on that," Izuku laughed nervously. "You'll learn to love it." Majima cackled. As the evening settled in, the apartment felt a little less dusty, a little less hostile. Izuku Midoriya had broken the mold. He wasn't trying to be All Might anymore. He was starting to figure out how to be Deku. The Deku who could fight, the Deku who could survive, the Deku who could carry the weight of the world without breaking his back. He looked at his hand, clenching it into a fist. The memory of the green lightning still hummed under his skin. Full cowling. He had a name for it now. And he had a path. "Just watch me," he whispered to himself. "I'm going to master this. I'm going to be the hero who wins." Outside, the first stars of the evening appeared. And somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. But inside the apartment, for the first time, there was peace. The calm before the next storm. "All right," Saejima stood up. "Dinner time. We're having chanko nabe. 10 pounds of it." 10 pounds? Izuku paled. "Eat up, weed," Majima laughed, slapping Izuku on the back. "You got a lot of growing to do." The concept of mourning in Gran Torino's apartment was rapidly becoming a loose interpretation of whenever the masters decided to inflict violence. On the third day, violence arrived with a soundtrack. Izuku Midoriya was jolted awake not by a shout, nor by a physical blow, but by the ear-splitting, distorted screech of a microphone feedback loop. He bolted upright in his futon, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, green sparks of one for all already flickering instinctively across his skin. "Villain?" Izuku shrieked, eyes darting around the dim room. "Worse." Goro Majima's voice boomed through a cheap, portable karaoke machine amp that had been set up on the breakfast table. "It's showtime, Deku-chan." The room was bathed in a chaotic, spinning light. Majima had somehow acquired a disco ball, a cheap, battery-operated one, and hung it from the ceiling fan. It cast nauseating swirls of red, blue, and green across the peeling wallpaper and the sleeping form of Taiga Saejima, who merely grunted, rolled over, and pulled a blanket over his massive head. Majima stood on the kitchen counter, wearing his signature snakeskin jacket and leather pants, holding a microphone. He looked like a rock star who had been booked at a venue that was actively being demolished. Yesterday, Saejima-chan taught you how to be a rock. Majima yelled into the mic, the reverb turned up to an obnoxious level. Today I teach you how to be the wind, the water, the funk. Gran Torino sat in his armchair, earplugs firmly in place, sipping tea as if he were watching a weather forecast and not a manic yakuza performing a concert in his kitchen. Get dressed, kid, Gran Torino said, his voice cutting through the noise surprisingly well. And stretch your hips. You're going to need them. The dojo of disco. 10 minutes later, Izuku stood in the center of the cleared living room. He was wearing his Yui gym uniform, feeling incredibly self-conscious as the disco ball continued its relentless spinning. Okay, Izuku said, trying to activate his analytical brain to make sense of the situation. So, the objective today is mobility? Mobility? Majima scoffed, hopping down from the counter. He landed with that eerie, silent grace that contradicted his loud personality. Mobility is for cars. We're talking about rhythm. Majima prowled around Izuku, the microphone still in his hand. I watched you fight yesterday, Majima said. You got the full cowling thing down. Nice. Very shiny. But you move like a tank. You charge in straight lines. Vroom, vroom, smash. Straight lines are the fastest distance between 2 points, Izuku argued weakly. In geometry class? Sure, Majima poked Izuku's chest with the mic. In a fight? A straight line is a coffin. If I know where you're going, I can be there waiting with a knife, a bat, or a very stiff drink. Majima snapped his fingers. Hit it, DJ. There was no DJ. Majima just kicked the play button on the karaoke machine with his heel. Suddenly, the room was filled with the aggressive, high-tempo synth-pop beats of a song that sounded suspiciously like 24-Hour Cinderella. Lesson 1. Majima shouted over the music. Don't get hit. But do it with style. Majima didn't attack immediately. He started to move. But it wasn't a combat stance. He was dancing. He spun on his heel, did a little shuffle, moonwalked backward, and then pirouette. It was mesmerizing and completely ridiculous. Come on! Majima beckoned. Attack me! Try to touch the jacket. It's expensive Italian leather, so don't scratch it. Izuku hesitated. This felt like a trap. But Gran Torino was watching with hawk-like intensity, and Saejima was now sitting up, observing with a critical eye. Okay, Izuku muttered. Full cowling. 5%. The green lightning hummed. Izuku bent his knees and launched himself. A straight dash, aiming to grab Majima's sleeve. Too slow. Majima sang, literally singing the words in tune with the track. Majima didn't dodge in a conventional sense. He dropped into a split, letting Izuku sail over his head. As Izuku landed and turned, Majima was already spinning on his back, his legs scything through the air like helicopter blades. Izuku yelped and jumped back to avoid having his ankles shattered. You're thinking, Majima accused, popping back up to his feet. I can see your brain gears grinding. Oh, he's on the floor, I should kick downwards. Wrong. By the time you think it, I'm already gone. Majima lunged. He swung the microphone like a flail. Izuku raised his arms to block. Smack. The mic hit his forearm. It didn't hurt much, but the humiliation stung. Don't block. Majima yelled. Flow. Listen to the beat, Deku. The fight has a heartbeat. Boom bap, boom bap. If you move off beat, you get hit. I don't understand. Izuku cried, dodging a spinning back fist. How can a fight have a beat? Everything has a rhythm. Saejima rumbled from the sidelines. Your heart. Your breath. The enemy's panic. Majima controls the rhythm because he is insane. You must learn to hear it. Less talking, more dancing. Majima cranked the volume. For the next hour, Izuku Midoriya underwent the most embarrassing torture of his life. He was forced to dodge Majima's erratic, breakdance-infused attacks while the music blared. If Izuku stopped moving, Majima hit him. If Izuku moved in a straight line, Majima tripped him. If Izuku tried to analyze the attack pattern, Majima would change the song to a slow ballad and attack in slow motion, confusing Izuku's timing completely. Loosen up! Majima shouted, doing a handstand and trying to kick Izuku with his feet. Your shoulders are up to your ears. You look like a constipated turtle. Be a noodle. A green, electric noodle. I'm trying. Izuku panted, sweat pouring down his face. Don't try. Majima landed and spun. Do. Feel the floor. The floor is your friend. The wall is your friend. Use M, Majima demonstrated. He ran at the wall, ran up 3 steps, backflipped off it, and landed behind Izuku. See? Majima grinned. The world is a playground. You heroes, you treat the city like it's made of glass. You're afraid to break things. But in a fight, everything is a tool. Momentum is a tool. Izuku wiped his brow. He watched Majima bouncing on his toes, perfectly in sync with the bassline. He's right, Izuku realized. I'm rigid. I'm bracing for impact constantly. I'm moving like a chess piece, one square at a time. Majima moves like water spilling downhill. Okay, Izuku whispered. Be the noodle. What was that? I said. Izuku took a breath, letting the one for all energy loosen his muscles instead of tightening them. Be the noodle. The song changed. Something faster. Eurobeat. Majima grinned. That's the spirit. Let's go. Majima rushed him. This time, Izuku didn't plant his feet to block. He didn't charge to meet him. As Majima swung a wild haymaker, Izuku let his knees buckle. He dropped, sliding across the floorboards on his knees. The punch whistled over his hair. Use the floor. Izuku channeled 5% into his hand and pushed off the ground, spinning his body horizontally. It wasn't a calculated move. It was a reaction. His leg swung out. It wasn't a perfect martial arts kick. It was sloppy. But it was fast. Majima, surprised by the sudden change in elevation, had to hop backward to avoid the sweep. Oh ho! Majima laughed, clapping his hands. The rabbit learns to dig. Again, Izuku scrambled up. He didn't return to a stance. He kept moving. He bounced. He swayed. He looked ridiculous, but he felt lighter. Majima threw a high kick. Izuku ducked, twisting his torso. Majima feinted a punch and went for a sweep. Izuku jumped, pushing off the wall to launch himself sideways. Yes. Yes. Majima cackled. Don't stop. Keep the flow. Izuku closed his eyes for a second, listening to the thumping bass. Left, right, duck, spin. It wasn't about predicting the future. It was about riding the present. For a glorious 10 seconds, Izuku Midoriya was untouchable. He weaved through Majima's assault like a leaf in a hurricane. He wasn't overpowering the mad dog. He was existing in the spaces where the mad dog wasn't. Then, the song ended. Izuku froze. Majima didn't. Bonk. Majima's fist gently tapped the top of Izuku's head. Song's over, Majima whispered. You stopped. Izuku collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. That is exhausting. But you didn't get hit for the last verse, Gran Torino noted, clicking his stopwatch. Progress. You have the agility, Majima said, squatting down and lighting a cigarette, which Gran Torino immediately swatted out of his mouth with his cane. But you're still thinking like a brawler. You want to punch things. With your style, this shoot style you're talking about, you need to think about angles. Angles? Izuku asked. Look, Majima stood up and spun. My breaker style works because I hit you from places you can't see. I hit you with my elbow when I'm facing away. I kick you when I'm on the ground. You have the power to jump around like a flea on caffeine. Use that. Majima grabbed a piece of chalk from a nearby shelf. Why Gran Torino had chalk was a mystery, and drew a circle on the floor. If the enemy is in the circle, Majima said, a hero stands in front and punches. A coward runs away. A mad dog? Majima drew arrows pointing into the circle from every direction, spirals, zigzags, loops. A mad dog attacks from everywhere at once. Don't be a point on a line, Deku. Be a cloud. A storm. The rooftop confessional. By the time evening fell, Izuku felt less like a human and more like a bag of tenderized meat. But his movement had changed. He walked with a looser gait. His shoulders weren't glued to his ears anymore. He found Majima up on the roof of the apartment complex. The city lights of Kofu twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the blinding neon of Tokyo. Majima was leaning against the railing, his snakeskin jacket shimmering in the moonlight. He wasn't manic now. He was quiet. The mad dog mask had slipped, revealing the tired, scarred man beneath. Majima-san? Izuku approached cautiously. Majima didn't turn. Yo. You survived the day, kid. Barely, Izuku admitted, joining him at the railing. My legs feel like jelly. Good. Means you used them. They stood in silence for a moment. The wind ruffled Izuku's curly hair. Why do you do it? Izuku asked suddenly. Do what? Act. Like that, Izuku gestured vaguely. The crazy laughing. The dancing. Gran Torino said you're a legend in the underworld. But you seem calculated? Majima finished for him. He turned, his one eye fixing Izuku with a piercing stare. Let me tell you a secret, Deku. The world is a heavy place. Especially for guys like us. Guys who fight. Majima pulled a pack of cigarettes out, tapped one, but just held it in his fingers. If you take it too seriously, the weight crushes you. You get stiff. You get rigid. And then you break. Majima looked at the cigarette. I had a brother once. Not by blood, but a kyodai. Saejima, Izuku blinked. Saejima-san? Yeah. We made a promise to climb to the top together. But life kicked our teeth in. He went to prison for 18 years. I lost my eye. I was tortured. I was put in a cage. Izuku gasped softly. He looked at the eye patch with new understanding. I learned something in that cage, Majima continued, his voice low and raspy. If you play by their rules, you lose. If you try to be the stoic, honorable soldier, they just use you and throw you away. So I decided I'd go mad. Majima grinned, but it wasn't the manic grin from training. It was a sad, crooked thing. I decided to be the wildest, craziest thing in the room. Because if they think you're crazy, they can't predict you. And if you're laughing, you ain't crying. He turned fully to Izuku. You remind me of someone. Another guy I know. Kiryu. He's like you. Stoic. Heavy burden. Carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. Always frowning. Always trying to save everyone. Majima poked Izuku's chest. You got that same look. You worship this all-might guy, right? You want to be him. He's the symbol of peace, Izuku said automatically. I have to be, you have to be you, Majima cut him off sharp. Obsession is a poison, kid. I spent years chasing Kiryu around, trying to fight him, trying to beat him. Maybe I was trying to prove I was stronger. Maybe I just wanted him to look at me, Majima sighed. But if you just chase a ghost, or a symbol, you never find your own rhythm. You just become a bad cover version of a good song. Izuku gripped the railing. But All Might is perfect. Nobody is perfect, Majima snapped. Saejima ain't perfect. I ain't perfect. Even All Might, he's bleeding, isn't he? He's fading. Izuku looked down. The image of All Might's skeletal true form flashed in his mind. You have his power, Majima said. But you can't have his life. You gotta find your own way to fight. Your own way to laugh. Majima pushed off the railing and stretched his arms. That's why I'm teaching you the breaker style. All Might stands there and takes the hit because he's a mountain. You're a rabbit. A mad rabbit. So embrace it. Spin. Jump. Bite. Do whatever you gotta do to win. And smile while you do it. Majima leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because the moment you stop having fun, the fear takes over. And fear makes you slow. Izuku looked at Majima. Really looked at him. He saw the scars. He saw the exhaustion. But he also saw a fire that refused to be extinguished. A mad rabbit, Izuku mused. He tested the words. They felt liberating. Thank you, Majima-san, Izuku said, bowing. I think I understand. Don't get mushy on me. Majima swatted the back of Izuku's head. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow, Saejima is gonna take you to the garbage dump. And let me tell ya, that guy doesn't know the meaning of the word fun. Majima walked toward the roof access door, humming 24-hour Cinderella to himself. Izuku stayed on the roof for a few more minutes. He closed his eyes and tried to summon the feeling of the rhythm. Boom bap. Boom bap. He visualized the fight with the Noma. Instead of standing his ground and breaking his arm, he imagined sliding underneath it. Spinning. Kicking the knee. Using the Noma's own weight against it. He imagined the green lightning not as a rigid armor, but as a neon light show. Shoot style, Izuku whispered to the wind. Mad Dog variation. He smiled. It wasn't All Might's smile. It was smaller, sharper. Let's dance. The synthesis. The next morning, the training resumed. But something had clicked. Gran Torino watched from the kitchen as Izuku sparred with Majima again. The music was playing, some high-energy J-pop track. Majima swung his bat. Izuku didn't just dodge, he dropped onto his hands, his legs spinning in a flare that swept under Majima's guard. As Majima hopped over it, Izuku used the momentum to launch himself upward, twisting in the air. He delivered a kick. It wasn't a straight punt. It was a spinning heel kick, executed with the erratic timing of a glitching video game character. Wham! The heel connected with Majima's shoulder. It wasn't a knockout blow, but it sent the Yakuza stumbling back. Majima froze. He rubbed his shoulder. Then, slowly, a massive, genuine grin spread across his face. Ha! Majima pointed the bat at Izuku. You hit me! You actually hit me! I felt the beat, Izuku said, landing in a crouch, his eyes bright. And then I broke it. That's it! Majima cackled, dancing a little jig. That's the stuff. You're getting dangerous, Deku-chan. Saejima walked into the room, carrying a massive duffel bag. He looked at the two of them, the sweating, grinning boy and the manic Yakuza. He is moving better, Saejima noted. He is fluid. He's a natural dancer. Majima declared. Good, Saejima dropped the duffel bag. It hit the floor with a sound like a car crash. Because fluidity is useless if you shatter upon impact. Saejima looked at Izuku. The playfulness vanished from the room, replaced by a heavy, suffocating pressure. You have learned to move like the dog, Saejima said. Now you must learn to bite like the tiger. Izuku swallowed hard. The fun was over. But he wasn't afraid. He adjusted his gloves. He felt the rhythm of one for all humming in his veins, a steady, driving bassline. I'm ready, Saejima-san, Izuku said. Saejima cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. We shall see. If Goro Majima was a hurricane, chaotic, unpredictable, and deafening, then Taiga Saejima was a continental drift. He was quiet, slow, and possessed the crushing inevitability that made the ground tremble without him ever having to stomp. The morning after Majima's disco rhythm training, the atmosphere in Gran Torino's apartment had shifted. The cheap disco ball had been taken down. The karaoke machine was unplugged and shoved into a closet. The air was no longer filled with the scent of cheap cigarettes and manic energy. Instead, it smelled of incense, old wood, and a heavy, suffocating silence. Izuku Midoriya sat at the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of green tea. His body felt lighter than it had in days, thanks to Majima's lessons on fluidity, but his mind was clouded with a new anxiety. Across from him sat Saejima. The massive man was eating a bowl of oatmeal with the solemnity of a monk performing a ritual. He wore a heavy green parka despite the mild spring weather, his shaved head glistening slightly under the kitchen light. Eat, Saejima rumbled, his voice like gravel grinding in a cement mixer. We leave in 10 minutes. Yes, Saejima-san, Izuku replied, hastily shoveling rice into his mouth. Where are we going? Another rooftop? Saejima stopped eating. He looked up, his dark eyes locking onto Izuku's. There was no malice in them, but there was a weight, a profound, crushing sorrow mixed with iron resolve, that made Izuku want to shrink into his chair. Rooftops are for dreamers and acrobats, Saejima said. Today, we go to the ground. To the dirt. You learned to fly with the mad dog. Now you must learn to land. The graveyard of industry. The location Saejima had chosen was far removed from the residential district of Kofu. It was an illegal dumping ground on the outskirts of the city, nestled in a valley between two steep hills. It was a graveyard of the industrial era, a sprawling, chaotic landscape of rusted girders, crushed cars, mounds of concrete rubble, and towering stacks of discarded tires. The sun beat down on the metal, creating a shimmering haze of heat. The air tasted of rust and ozone. Gran Torino stood on a ridge overlooking the site, leaning on his cane. Majima was nowhere to be seen, likely sleeping off the previous day's exertion or causing trouble in town. It was just the tiger and the rabbit. This place, Saejima gestured with a massive hand to the sea of debris, is where things go when they are broken. When they are no longer useful. Izuku adjusted his gloves, sweat already pricking his forehead. It's a lot of trash. It is weight, Saejima corrected. Every piece of metal here has a history. A purpose. Now it is just burden. Saejima walked over to a rusted I-beam that must have weighed at least 400 pounds. It was half buried in a pile of gravel. He didn't bend his knees deeply. He didn't grunt. He simply gripped the metal, his back muscles shifting under his parka like tectonic plates, and pulled. With a screech of metal against stone, the beam came free. Saejima hoisted it onto his shoulder as if it were a baseball bat. Majima taught you to avoid the hit, Saejima said, turning to face Izuku. To slip. To dance. That is good. It keeps you alive. Saejima dropped the beam. The ground shook. Tum. Dust billowed up around his boots. But sometimes, Saejima continued, stepping through the dust cloud, you cannot dance. Sometimes the hallway is too narrow. Sometimes there is a hostage behind you. Sometimes the enemy is faster than you. He pointed a thick finger at Izuku's chest. What do you do when you cannot run, Midoriya? Izuku swallowed. I fight back. With what? Saejima asked. With your little flicks? With your 5% taps? You hit Majima yesterday, yes. But did you hurt him? Izuku hesitated. He rubbed his shoulder. You annoyed him, Saejima stated flatly. If Majima wanted you dead, you would be dead. You lack stopping power. You lack mass. Saejima walked over to a crushed sedan, a compact car that had been flattened into a cube. Push this, Saejima ordered. Push it? Izuku blinked. To where? To the other side of the yard. About 50 meters. Okay, Izuku nodded. He stepped forward, green lightning crackling around his body. Full cowling. No, Saejima barked. The sound was so sudden and loud it killed the lightning instantly. No quirk. No quirk? Izuku looked at the car. It was solid steel. Even crushed, it weighed over a ton. Saejima-san, I can't move that without one for all. It's physically impossible for a do it, Saejima interrupted. There was no room for argument. Saejima's expression was absolute. Izuku approached the cube of metal. It was jagged, rusty, and hot to the touch. He placed his hands against the flat side. He dug his red sneakers into the dirt. Okay. Just push. Engage the core. Drive with the legs. HNNNGH. Izuku strained. His muscles seized. Veins popped in his neck. The car didn't move. Not a millimeter. It's too heavy. Izuku gasped, relaxing his stance. Of course it is, Saejima said calmly. It is heavier than you. It is harder than you. Why should it move just because you want it to? Saejima walked up beside him. He placed one hand on the car. You are trying to move it with your muscles, Saejima said. You are thinking, I am strong, therefore I can push. But strength is not just muscle. It is connection. Saejima closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, inhaling through his nose. His chest expanded. Connect your feet to the earth, Saejima instructed. Feel the roots growing from your heels. The earth is your anchor. The object is your enemy. You are the bridge. Saejima pushed. He didn't look like he was straining. His face remained impassive. But the car groaned. Metal screeched against dirt. Slowly, agonizingly, the 1-ton cube began to slide. Willpower, Saejima grunted. You must will the object to move. You must believe that you are heavier than it. That you are the mountain, and it is the pebble. He stepped back. Again, the grind. For the next 3 hours, Izuku Midoriya learned the true meaning of the grind. He pushed the car. He pulled tires. He carried buckets of gravel up the hill and dumped them, only to fill them up and carry them back down. Saejima forbade the use of one for all. Your quirk is a crutch, Saejima had said. You treat it like a battery pack. Oh, I need to lift this, turn on the battery. If the battery dies, you are useless. You must build the machine first. The battery comes later. By noon, Izuku's hands were raw and blistered. His uniform was stained with grease and dirt. His legs trembled so violently he could barely stand. Break, Saejima announced. Izuku collapsed onto a pile of relatively clean tires, gasping for air. Water, please. Saejima tossed him a bottle. Izuku downed it in seconds. Saejima sat on a rusted oil drum, taking out a small block of wood and a carving knife. He began to whittle, slivers of wood curling away from the blade. You have heart, Saejima said quietly. Most would have quit an hour ago. Or cheated and used their power. I want to be a hero, Izuku wheezed. I can't cheat. Hero, Saejima turned the word over in his mouth like a stone. A strange word. In my world, we have Gakudo. The extreme path. It is not about saving people. It is about living without regret. Izuku wiped sweat from his eyes. Majima-san mentioned you went to prison. For 18 years. Saejima's knife paused. I did. Why? Izuku asked, emboldened by the exhaustion. You don't seem like a bad person. You're scary, but you're not evil. Saejima looked at the carving. It was taking the shape of a small deity, a Jizo statue. I went to prison for a crime I intended to commit, Saejima said. I went to kill 18 men. I thought it was my duty. My loyalty to my clan. Izuku's eyes widened. 18 men? I believe that violence was the only language the world understood, Saejima continued. I was willing to become a demon to protect my family. But in prison, I learned that violence is a heavy coat. You wear it, and it keeps you warm, but it drags you down. It suffocates you. Saejima looked at Izuku. You have a power that can smash buildings, Midoriya. All Might uses it to save. But one day, you will hit someone, and they will not get up. One day, your power will be the thing that destroys. I know, Izuku whispered. I'm terrified of it. That's why I hold back. Fear is good, Saejima nodded. Fear keeps you human. But hesitation? Hesitation gets you killed. And if you die, you cannot save anyone. Saejima stood up, pocketing the carving. It is time to stop pushing cars. It is time to learn how to stop a train. The lesson of heat. Stand up, Saejima ordered. Izuku forced his trembling legs to obey. Activate your quirk. Full cowling. 5%. Right. Izuku clenched his fists. The green lightning returned, a welcome relief to his aching muscles. The energy soothed the fatigue, acting like a numbing agent. Now Saejima walked 10 paces away. Hit me. What? Hit me, Saejima repeated. With the intent to put me down. Use your shoot style. Use Majima's moves. Whatever you have. But Saejima-san, if I use a smash. Saejima's eyes narrowed, and then, the air changed. It wasn't a quirk. There was no visual effect, no glowing lights. But suddenly, the dumping ground felt like the bottom of the ocean. A pressure, heavy and suffocating, radiated from the large man. It was a primal, terrified feeling that triggered every alarm bell in Izuku's lizard brain. It was the feeling of being locked in a cage with a predator that hadn't eaten in weeks. Behind Saejima, the heat haze seemed to warp into the shape of a massive, roaring tiger, its fangs dripping with phantom blood. Killing intent. Izuku froze. His breath hitched. The green lightning flickered and died. He was back in the alleyway in Hosu. He was back at the USJ, watching the Nomu crush Aizawa. He was a small, quirkless boy staring at a monster. You flinched, Saejima's voice cut through the illusion. The pressure vanished instantly. Izuku dropped to his knees, gasping as if he had been drowning. What was that? That, Saejima said, walking over his heat. It is aura. It is the projection of your spirit. Saejima looked down at him. All Might has it. When he smiles, villains freeze. Not because he is strong, but because his spirit is overwhelming. He projects safety. He projects invincibility. I felt like I was going to die, Izuku admitted, shaking. Because I projected violence, Saejima said. I projected domination. This is what you face when you fight real villains, Midoriya. Stain. Shigaraki. They have this aura. And right now your aura is small. It is a flickering candle. Saejima offered a hand. Izuku took it, pulling himself up. You rely on your quirk to make you scary, Saejima explained. You think the lightning and the speed will intimidate them. But true intimidation comes from the eyes. From the gut. You must learn to project your will. How? Izuku asked desperately. How do I do that? By accepting the violence, Saejima said. By accepting that you are going to get hit, and deciding that you will hit back harder. Saejima walked back to his spot, again. Full cowling. And this time, do not turn it off. If you turn it off, I will hit you. The charge. The sparring that followed was brutal. Saejima didn't use fancy footwork like Majima. He didn't spin. He walked forward. Izuku tried to use his speed. He darted around, looking for openings. He kicked Saejima's leg. It felt like kicking a tree trunk. He punched Saejima's side. Saejima merely grunted and kept walking. Light! Saejima shouted. Too light! You are stinging me! I am not allergic to bees! Saejima swung a fist. It was slow, telegraphing the move. Izuku dodged easily. Don't dodge! Saejima roared. The command short-circuited Izuku's brain. What? If you dodge, you lose ground. Saejima swung again. You are giving me the space. Take the ground. Hold the line. Izuku gritted his teeth. Take the ground? Against the tank? Saejima came in with a shoulder check. Izuku tried to brace himself. Bam! Izuku flew backward, crashing into a pile of trash bags. Get up! Saejima ordered. You are focusing on not getting hurt. You should be focusing on hurting me. Izuku stood up, wiping blood from his lip. He was frustrated. Majima had taught him to flow. Saejima was telling him to crash. They were opposites. How was he supposed to combine them? Wait! Izuku looked at the rusted car he had pushed earlier. The bridge. Connect to the earth. Majima's lesson, don't be stiff. Saejima's lesson, be heavy. Can you be heavy and fluid at the same time? Water, Izuku whispered. Water is heavy. A tsunami is heavy. Saejima charged again. A straight punch, aimed right at Izuku's chest. Izuku didn't dodge. But he didn't stand stiffly either. He stepped into the punch. He lowered his hips, widening his stance, grounding himself like he did with the car. He activated 8%, pushing his limit just a fraction. He crossed his arms in an X block, but he didn't just block. He leaned forward, meeting the fist halfway. Crack! The impact rattled his bones. His forearms screamed in agony. His feet dug furrows into the dirt as he slid back a meter. But he didn't fly away. He was still standing. Saejima's eyes widened slightly. I'm here! Izuku shouted through the pain. Good! Saejima yelled. Now, give it back! Izuku dropped his guard. The pain in his arms was blinding, but he used it. He channeled the heat. I am not a victim. I am here. He didn't snap a quick jab. He wound up. It was a large, telegraphed motion, the kind Majima would have laughed at. He pulled his right fist back, twisting his waist, loading his hips, loading his legs. He felt the energy of one for all pull in his fist, but also in his shoulder, his back, his feet. Charge attack. Saejima saw it coming. He didn't block. He tensed his abdominal muscles, preparing to take it. Smash! Izuku unleashed the punch. It wasn't a Detroit smash. It was something rawer. A chaotic, desperate haymaker fueled by pure grit. The fist connected with Saejima's gut. Wham! A shockwave of dust blasted outward from the impact point. The pile of tires behind them toppled over. For a second, time stood still. Then Taiga Saejima, the man who had stood immovable for hours, slid backward. His boots scraped against the gravel. 2 inches. 4 inches. A foot. He came to a stop. He let out a breath that sounded like a steam engine venting. Izuku stood there, his fist still extended, panting heavily. The green lightning faded. His arm was trembling uncontrollably, bruised and battered, but not broken. Saejima looked down at his stomach. There was a red mark there. He poked it. Humph! A slow, terrifying grin spread across Saejima's face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator acknowledging another predator. That, Saejima rumbled, was a bite. Izuku's knees gave out. He collapsed forward, but Saejima caught him by the back of his costume before he hit the dirt. You stood your ground, Saejima said, hoisting Izuku up effortlessly. You took the pain. And you returned it. That is the tiger's way. Did I pass? Izuku mumbled, consciousness fading. For today, Saejima said. But you have much to learn about durability. Your bones are glass. We must turn them into iron. The evening feast. That evening, they didn't eat at the apartment. Saejima insisted on real food. They went to a small, hole-in-the-wall yakiniku, grilled meat, restaurant in the back streets of Kofu. It was the kind of place filled with smoke, shouting, and men with questionable tattoos. Gran Torino, Majima, Saejima, and Izuku sat at a booth. The table was covered in plates of raw beef, pork, and vegetables. Eat. Saejima commanded, piling meat onto the grill. Muscle is built in the kitchen, not the gym. Majima was already 3 beers deep, loudly recounting a story about a zombie apocalypse that Izuku was 90% sure was a movie plot he had confused for reality. So there I was, with a shotgun and a bad attitude. Majima cackled, waving a pair of tongs. And the zombie goes rawr, and I go not today, ugly. Gran Torino sighed, sipping his sake. You're embarrassing the boy, Majima. He loves it. Look at him. Majima pointed at Izuku. Izuku was staring at his plate, but he was smiling. His body ached. His arms were wrapped in bandages. But he felt a warmth in his chest that wasn't just the grill. Saejima-san, Izuku said quietly, watching the large man flip a steak with precision. Today, when you talked about heat and aura. Izuku hesitated. I've always tried to be like All Might. To smile and say I am here. But today, when I hit you, I didn't feel like smiling. I felt angry. The table went quiet. Majima stopped laughing. Gran Torino set down his cup. I felt angry that I was weak, Izuku continued. Angry that I had to be protected. And I used that anger to push myself. He looked up, worried. Is that wrong? Does that make me a villain? Saejima placed a piece of perfectly cooked beef in Izuku's bowl. Anger is fuel, Midoriya, Saejima said solemnly. It is like gasoline. If you spill it everywhere, you burn down your house. If you put it in the engine, it drives the car. Heroes pretend they don't have anger, Majima added, his voice unusually soft. They pretend they're angels. But the best ones? The ones who really change things? They're the ones who are pissed off at the injustice. They're the ones who look at the bad guys and say, I'm gonna wreck you because you hurt my friends. Gran Torino nodded. Toshinori had plenty of anger in his youth. He was angry at the state of the world. He channeled it into peace. You don't have to be a saint to be a hero, kid. You just have to be in control. Saejima raised his glass. To the Mad Rabbit. May his anger be a straight arrow, not a wildfire. To the Mad Rabbit. Majima cheered. To the Mad Rabbit, Izuku repeated, clinking his glass of oolong tea against theirs. As he ate, Izuku looked at his reflection in the dark window of the restaurant. He looked tired. He looked beaten up, but for the first time, he didn't look like a scared kid wearing a costume. He looked like someone who could take a punch. I'll master it, Izuku thought, watching the flames dance on the grill. The speed. The power. The heat. I'll make them mine. The transition from the sterile, disciplined environment of UA High to the chaotic, sweat-stained reality of Goro Majima's training regimen had been jarring. But nothing could have prepared Izuku Midoriya for Friday night. Absolutely not, Izuku said, staring at the pile of clothes on the tatami mat. I can't wear that. You will wear it, Majima insisted, holding up a jacket that seemed to be made entirely of reflective silver material and aggressive zippers. You stick out like a sore thumb, Deku-chan. You look like a high school student who got lost on his way to a math Olympiad. I am a high school student, Izuku protested, clutching his favorite t-shirt to his chest like a shield. Not tonight, Taiga Saejima rumbled from the corner of the room. The giant man was already dressed, having traded his green parka for a dark, nondescript trench coat and a flat cap that shadowed his eyes. He looked less like a retired yakuza and more like a noir detective who solved crimes by punching them. Tonight, we are going into the belly of the beast. You need to blend in. Gran Torino sat on the kitchen counter, swinging his legs and adjusting a small earpiece. Do as they say, kid. Heroes patrol the daylight. But crime happens in the shadows. You need to learn how to navigate the muck without getting dirty. Izuku sighed, defeated. He picked up the clothes Majima had procured. Izuku was afraid to ask how. 15 minutes later, Izuku Midoriya stood before the mirror. Gone were the red sneakers and the innocent nerdy attire. In their place stood a young man wearing dark gray cargo pants, heavy combat boots, a black tank top under an open, dark red bomber jacket, and, at Majima's insistence, a fake gold chain. I look like a delinquent, Izuku muttered, mortified. You look like a guy who knows where to buy fireworks illegally, Majima corrected with a grin, slapping Izuku on the back. Perfect. Now fix your face. My face? Your eyes are too round. Too hopeful, Majima demonstrated, narrowing his one good eye into a terrifying slit. Squint a little. Look like you just stepped in gum and you're looking for the guy who spit it out, Izuku tried. He furrowed his brow and narrowed his eyes. You look constipated, Saejima noted dryly. It's a work in progress. Majima waved a hand. Let's go. The city is waiting, the neon jungle. They took the train into Tokyo, but they didn't get off at the clean, hero-patrolled stations of Shibuya or Ginza. They went deeper, into the wards where the streetlights flickered and the police patrols were infrequent. The district was a sensory overload. Neon signs stacked vertically like totem poles of commerce. Pachinko parlors, host clubs, snack bars, and information booths. The air smelled of grilled meat, stale beer, cigarette smoke, and rain. It was loud, a cacophony of electronic jingles, shouting barkers, and the low thrum of thousands of people moving with intent. Stay close, Saejima ordered, his voice low. And keep your hands out of your pockets. Hands in pockets means you are slow to draw. Or you are hiding something. Right, Izuku whispered, his eyes darting around. Stop scanning, Gran Torino's voice crackled in his ear. You're moving your head too much. You look like a tourist. Use your peripheral vision. This place is intense, Izuku murmured. He saw a man with a shark head arguing with a bouncer. He saw a woman levitating drink trays in a crowded bar window. Quirks were everywhere, but here they weren't used for heroics. They were used for hustle. This is the ecosystem, Majima said, walking with a swagger that parted the crowd like the Red Sea. In UA, you learn about villains who want to conquer the world, but 90% of crime ain't about conquering the world. It's about money. It's about territory. It's about pride. Majima stopped abruptly in front of a convenience store. He pointed to a group of 3 men standing near the entrance. They were laughing, smoking, and occasionally stopping passers-by. Quiz time, Deku, Majima said. Look at those 3. What do you see? Izuku analyzed them. 3 males. Mid-20s. One has a mutation quirk, elongated fingers. They seem relaxed. Just loitering. Wrong, Saejima said. Look closer, Majima tapped his eye patch. Look at their eyes. Look at their hands. Izuku focused. He engaged the breathing techniques Saejima had taught him, calming his racing heart. He looked past the surface. The man with the long fingers wasn't just smoking. His eyes were constantly checking the alleyway entrance next to the store. The other 2 were laughing, but their bodies were angled to block the view of the ATM machine just inside the door. There, lookouts, Izuku realized. And? Majima pressed. The one in the middle, Izuku noted, he's tapping his leg. Nervous habit? No, he's tapping a rhythm. Signaling? He's waiting, Saejima corrected. Someone is inside the store, probably shaking down the clerk. Those three are the wall. We should stop them. Izuku instinctively took a step forward, his hand reaching for a communicator that wasn't there. Majima's hand clamped onto Izuku's shoulder like a vice. Hold your horses, hero. Look around. See that camera? Majima pointed to a dome camera on the street corner. See that police box down the street? Yeah, but if you rush in there, Majima hissed, you start a brawl. The clerk gets panicked. Maybe he hits the silent alarm. Police come. You don't have a license to engage yet. You get arrested. Game over. But we can't just let them. Watch, Saejima commanded. A moment later, a fourth man exited the store. He didn't have a bag of money. He had a carton of cigarettes and a bento box. He walked out, patted the lookouts on the shoulder, and they all walked away. Izuku blinked. He bought dinner? He took his tax, Majima explained. Low-level protection racket. He takes free stuff. The clerk doesn't report it because it's cheaper than getting his window smashed. If you had rushed in, you would have escalated a petty theft into a hostage situation. Izuku slumped. I assumed the worst. Street smarts ain't about assuming, Saejima said, resuming his walk. It's about reading the temperature. That was a cold crime. Boring. We're looking for heat. The art of intimidation. They walked deeper into the district, into an area Majima affectionately called the gut. Here, the neon was broken, and the shadows were longer. Lesson 2, Majima announced, spinning on his heel to face Izuku while walking backward. How not to look like a victim. Do I look like a victim? Izuku asked. You look like a walking kick-me sign, Majima laughed. You walk with your shoulders hunched. You apologize when people bump into you. You're polite. Politeness gets you mugged. Saejima stopped. Show him the face, Majima. Majima stopped walking. A couple of drunk salarymen were stumbling toward them, loud and obnoxious. Majima didn't say a word. He just tilted his head, let his jaw go slack, and widened his single eye until it looked like it was about to pop out of his skull. He emitted a low, guttural noise, somewhere between a growl and a giggle. The salaryman took one look, sobered up instantly, apologized to the air, and crossed the street. That, Majima said, snapping back to normal, is the crazy eye. People don't mess with crazy. They mess with weak. They mess with strong. But crazy? Crazy is a variable they can't calculate. I can't do that. Izuku cried. You don't have to be crazy, Saejima said. You just have to be heavy, Saejima demonstrated. A towering man with a mutation quirk that gave him rock-like skin bumped into Saejima. Watch it, bald, the rock man started. Saejima didn't move. He didn't blink. He just looked at the man. He projected that heat, the aura of the tiger. He projected the absolute certainty that if violence occurred, he would be the one left standing. The rock man swallowed his words. Nice night. He hurried away. Your turn, Majima said, pointing to a narrow alleyway. Walk down there. Don't run. Don't hide. Just walk. If someone tries to stop you, handle it without fighting. Izuku looked down the alley. It was dark, lined with trash cans and shadowed doorways. Gran Torino? Izuku whispered. Do it, kid, the old hero replied. I'm monitoring. If you get stabbed, I'll call an ambulance. Probably. Probably? Izuku took a deep breath. Okay. Don't look like a victim. Be heavy. Be a mad dog. He started walking. He tried to mimic Saejima's heavy steps. He tried to keep his chin up. Halfway down the alley, a figure stepped out from behind a dumpster. A skinny guy with a quirk that made his hair look like writhing snakes. Hey kid, Snakehair sneered, flicking a switchblade open. Nice jacket. Gimme. Izuku stopped. His heart hammered. His instinct was to apologize or to activate full cowling immediately. No. Read the air. Izuku looked at the knife. It was cheap. The guy's hand was shaking slightly. He was desperate, likely a junkie. Izuku didn't step back. He stepped forward. Just one step. He remembered Majima's lesson on unpredictability. Izuku tilted his head. He didn't glare. He smiled. But he forced it to be the weirdest, most uncomfortable smile he could muster. A wide, unblinking expression that didn't reach his eyes. You want the jacket? Izuku asked, pitching his voice slightly higher, slightly manic. It's cursed. The last guy who wore it exploded. Pop! Everywhere. It was so messy. Do you like messes? He laughed. A short, sharp ha, the mugger blinked. What? I love messes. Izuku took another step, his hands twitching slightly, intentionally. Are you going to stab me? Please do it on the left side, the right side is itchy. The mugger looked at the knife. He looked at Izuku's unhinged smile. He looked at the cursed jacket. You're a freak, the mugger muttered, snapping the knife shut. Keep it, weirdo. The mugger scurried back into the shadows. Izuku let out a breath he had been holding for 30 seconds. He felt lightheaded. Not bad. Majima dropped from a fire escape above, landing silently next to him. A little theatrical, but you confused him. Confusion is better than a stab wound. I thought I was going to pass out, Izuku admitted. But you didn't. Saejima walked up behind them. You controlled the space. Now let's find some real trouble. The host club incident. An hour later they found it. They were passing a flashy establishment called Club Stardust. A commotion was spilling out onto the street. A group of 5 men in sharp suits, actual yakuza, or at least high-level enforcers, had surrounded a young woman and an older man who looked like the club owner. You owe the clan, Pops, the leader of the suits sneered. He had a quirk that made his skin glimmer like polished steel. Interest rates went up. Inflation, you know? I paid you last week. The owner pleaded. Please leave the girl out of this. One of the thugs grabbed the woman's arm. Maybe she can work off the debt? We're always hiring, the woman screamed. The crowd on the street watched, but nobody intervened. They averted their eyes. This was business. Midoriya, Saejima said quietly. Yes? What is the temperature? Izuku looked. The thugs were confident. They were hurting civilians. This wasn't a cold crime. This wasn't a transaction. This was violence. It's boiling, Izuku said, his voice hardening. Correct, Majima cracked his knuckles. Go get him, Tiger. Wait, Izuku paused. Just me? We're retired. Majima leaned against the lamppost, lighting a cigarette. Besides, if we step in, it becomes a turf war. If you step in, it's just a vigilante act. Go wild. But remember the rules. No killing, Izuku recited. Minimize collateral damage. And rule number 3, Majima grinned, his eye gleaming in the neon light. Use everything. Izuku nodded. He took a breath. He reached for one for all, letting the power flow. Full cowling. 5%. Keep it tight. Keep it hidden under the jacket. Green sparks flickered faintly around his collar. Izuku walked into the circle. Let her go, he said. He didn't shout. He didn't pose. He just spoke. The leader, Steelskin, turned around. He looked Izuku up and down, the cargo pants, the bomber jacket, the fake gold chain. Get lost, brat, Steelskin laughed. This is grown-up talk, I said. Izuku stepped closer, entering the leader's personal space. Let her go. One of the lackeys, a guy with fists the size of hams, swung at Izuku without warning. Beat it, Mad Dog rhythm. Izuku didn't block. He didn't brace. He felt the air shift. He heard the rustle of the fabric. He dropped to his knees, sliding under the punch like a baseball player sliding into home. As he slid, he kicked upward. Not hard enough to shatter bone, but hard enough to disrupt balance. His boot caught the lackey in the stomach. Oof. The lackey stumbled back. Izuku popped up to his feet, bouncing lightly. He felt the stare of the other 4 thugs. Get him! Steelskin roared. 3 of them rushed him at once. Don't think. Flow. Izuku grabbed the wrist of the first attacker. Instead of pulling away, he pulled with the pull, using the thug's own momentum to spin him around and shove him into the second attacker. Clash of heads. Two down. The third attacker, a guy with spikes protruding from his shoulders, charged for a tackle. Izuku looked around. Environment check. Trash can. Bicycle. Signboard. There. A heavy, metal A-frame advertising sign for all you can drink. Izuku sidestepped the tackle. He grabbed the sign. Taiga resolve. Be heavy. He felt the weight of the sign. It was awkward, unbalanced. Perfect. Heat action. Izuku yelled, internally. He swung the sign like a giant fly swatter. Clang. The sign impacted the side of Spike Shoulder's head. The metal bent. The thug went down instantly, eyes rolling back. You little punk! Steelskin roared. His skin turned completely metallic, shining under the streetlights. He looked invincible. I'm going to crush you, he charged. He was fast for a heavy guy. Izuku backed up. Analysis. He's metal. Punches won't hurt him much. Need leverage. Need impact. Izuku spotted it. A bicycle parked against the wall. A sturdy, heavy mamashari with a basket. Majima-san said everything is a weapon, Izuku whispered. He grabbed the frame of the bicycle. One for all 8%. He lifted the bike with one hand. It felt light. Steelskin threw a punch that could have cracked concrete. Izuku ducked, feeling the wind of the blow ruffle his hair. Then, Izuku exploded. A blue flame seemed to mix with his green lightning, the visual manifestation of his heat. He wasn't just fighting, he was dominating the space. Take this. Izuku swung the bicycle. He didn't swing it like a bat. He brought it down overhead, utilizing gravity and torque. Crash. The bicycle smashed onto Steelskin's head. The front wheel crumpled. The basket flattened. The handlebars bent around the villain's metallic neck. Steelskin staggered. The impact didn't pierce his skin, but the sheer kinetic force rattled his brain inside the metal shell. He wobbled. Izuku didn't stop. He spun, dragging the bike with him, and swept Steelskin's legs with the rear tire. The metal man fell with a heavy thud. Izuku stood over him, holding the mangled remains of the bicycle like a trophy. He was panting, his eyes wild, his stance wide and aggressive. Stay down! Izuku shouted. And this time, he wasn't asking. He projected the aura. The heat. The terrifying certainty that if the man got up, another bicycle was coming. Steelskin groaned and stayed down. Silence descended on the street. The club owner stared. The woman stared. The crowd stared. Holy crap, someone whispered. Did that kid just beat the Iron Clan with a bike? Majima began to slow clap from the sidewalk. Bravo! Encore! That was beautiful. The form. The execution. The bicycle abuse. Saejima nodded, a rare small smile on his face. He didn't hesitate. Police! Someone shouted from down the block. Sirens wailed. Exit stage left. Majima announced. Grab the kid. Majima and Saejima grabbed Izuku by the arms. Wait, I should give a statement. Izuku protested. Vigilantism is illegal, genius. Majima cackled. Run now, autograph later. They sprinted into the alleyway, vanishing into the shadows just as the police lights swept the corner. The train ride home. The adrenaline crash was severe. Izuku sat on the late-night train heading back to Yamanashi, his head resting against the glass. He was still wearing the bomber jacket and cargo pants, though they were now dusted with street grime. You did good, Gran Torino's voice came over the comms, which Izuku had finally remembered to turn back on. Your form was sloppy, but your decision-making was sound. You neutralized the threat without causing permanent injury. I hit a man with a bicycle, Izuku murmured, looking at his hands. I enjoyed it. You enjoyed protecting the weak, Saejima corrected, sitting next to him with his arms crossed. The bicycle was just a method. It's a slippery slope, Izuku said softly. I felt powerful. In a different way than when I use one for all normally. When I use one for all, I feel responsible. Tonight, I felt free. That's the mad dog in ya, Majima said, leaning over the seat from the row behind them. He was upside down again. Freedom is addictive. But don't worry. You got a good heart, Deku. You ain't gonna turn into a villain just because you discovered the joy of tactical bicycle warfare. Majima flicked Izuku's forehead. Just remember the difference. A villain breaks things because he can. A hero breaks things because he has to. Tonight you had to. Izuku touched his forehead. He thought about the woman's terrified face, and then her look of relief when the steel-skinned man went down. Street smarts, Izuku whispered. It's not just about knowing where the danger is. It's about knowing what you are willing to do to stop it. Exactly, Saejima rumbled. You are no longer a student hoping to pass a test. You are a force of nature. You are the tiger that walks the street, and the mad rabbit that swings the bike. Majima added. Izuku smiled tiredly. The mad rabbit. I think that nickname is sticking. The train rattled on into the darkness, carrying 3 legends and 1 hero in training who was rapidly becoming something entirely new. Hey, Izuku sat up suddenly. Who's going to pay for that bicycle? Majima and Saejima looked at each other. Gran Torino, they said in unison. In the earpiece, the old hero sputtered. I heard that. You're paying for it out of your allowance, kid,